Welcome to Grace Fountain, a place where we slow down long enough to notice grace. Not the loud, polished kind, but the quiet mercy that meets us in real life. Here, we tell the stories where grace found ordinary people in waiting seasons, in missteps, in the long ache between promise and fulfillment. Today, Grace meets a woman who waited longer than she ever imagined. A woman whose faith wavered, whose laughter cracked under disappointment, and whose story reminds us that delayed does not mean denied. This is where Grace met Sarah. There are stories in Scripture that feel loud, miracles that arrive with fire, moments you can't miss. And then there's Sarah. Her story whispers. It unfolds over decades, intense, in quiet disappointment, in the long stretch between a promise spoken and a promise fulfilled. This is the story of waiting when the promise feels late, of faith mixed with impatience, of laughter that starts as disbelief and ends as joy, and of grace that shows up when we're tired of hoping. When we first meet Sarah, she isn't old, not yet. She's simply childless. And in her world, that wasn't just painful, it was defining. Genesis tells us almost casually, Sarai was barren, she had no child. Just one line. But anyone who has waited for something deeply desired knows that one line can hold years of ache. Then God speaks. Not to Sarah directly, at least not at first. He speaks to Abram, a promise of land, of legacy, of descendants as countless as the stars. Imagine hearing that promise echoed secondhand. God said we'll have descendants. Stars, sand, nations. And you look at your body, at your calendar, at the years already gone. At first, maybe hope feels daring, risky even. So Sarah waits. She waits through seasons of travel, through tents pitched and taken down, through birthdays that quietly pass. And waiting changes you. At first, waiting stretches faith. Then it strains it. Then, if we're honest, it starts to expose it. Because eventually, waiting feels less like trust and more like being forgotten. After years of silence, Sarah does something deeply human. She tries to help God. She offers Hagar to Abraham, believing maybe the promise will come through another way, another womb, another plan. It's easy to judge this moment, but it's also painfully relatable. This is what delayed promises do. They make us pragmatic. They teach us how to settle for substitutes. Sarah wasn't rejecting God. She was trying to survive disappointment. And for a moment, it works. Ishmael is born. There is movement, something tangible. But substitutes never fully heal the ache they were meant to replace. They just complicate it. Grace doesn't leave Sarah here. But grace also doesn't pretend this choice didn't matter. There is tension. There is pain. There is fallout. Grace is kind, but it's not careless. Years later, God shows up again. By now, Sarah is old. Past the age where hope feels noble, hope now feels embarrassing. 3 visitors arrive. They speak of a son, and Sarah laughs. Not joyful laughter, not hopeful laughter. The kind of laughter you let out when something hurts too much to argue with. After I am worn out and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure? This laugh isn't mocking God. It's protecting Sarah, because believing again would cost her, and she has already paid so much. And here's the moment that changes everything. God doesn't withdraw the promise because she laughed. He doesn't scold her disbelief. He doesn't replace her. Instead, he names it. Why did Sarah laugh? Grace does that. It calls us into the open without pushing us away. Sarah denies it, of course. I did not laugh. Fear will do that. It makes us hide even our honesty. But God responds gently. No, but you did laugh. Not condemnation, recognition, as if to say, I see you. I know how long you've waited. I know what disappointment has done to your faith. And still, the promise stands. Time passes again, and then, impossibly, quietly, wonderfully, Sarah conceives. No fanfare, no announcement, just life growing where hope once died. When Isaac is born, Sarah laughs again. But this time it's different. God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. The laughter that once carried bitterness now carries wonder. The name Isaac literally means he laughs. Grace didn't erase Sarah's earlier laughter. It redeemed it. That's important. Grace doesn't shame your doubt. It transforms it. Grace doesn't demand perfect faith. It meets imperfect people and fulfills faithful promises anyway. Sarah's story reminds us of something we forget. Delayed does not mean denied, and waiting does not mean forgotten. God's timing often feels cruel when we're living inside it. But grace is working even when the calendar feels like an enemy. Sarah waited decades. She made mistakes. She laughed in disbelief. She tried to control outcomes. And still, grace found her. Not because she waited well, but because God is faithful. Maybe you're in your own Sarah season, waiting for something God spoke to your heart years ago. A calling, a healing, a restoration, a breakthrough that feels late. Maybe you've tried substitutes, workarounds, plan Bs that promised relief but left new wounds. Maybe you've laughed that tired laugh, the one that says, sure, if you say so. Grace isn't offended by that laugh. Grace is patient. It shows up intense, in ordinary days, in conversations you didn't expect to matter. Grace waits with you. And then, when the time is right, it fulfills what only God could do. Sarah's life ends quietly in Scripture. No grand farewell, but her legacy lives on. Not as a woman who waited perfectly, but as a woman who discovered that God keeps promises even when faith wavers. Grace met Sarah in her waiting, in her impatience, in her laughter. And grace will meet you too, right where the promise feels late, right where hope feels risky again. This is Grace Fountain, and if grace could find Sarah there, it can find you here too.